Hi, welcome to this video. In this video, I'd like to discuss how to use forearm rotation and strategic placing of the hand and the forearm in order to jump with chords, in order to leap with chords in very fast tempo. So the example I'm going to use is the last page of the last movement of the Second Sonata by Prokofiev. Now this is a page, I would say the whole last page, which causes a lot of problems for most of my students who want to play that piece. It is a very compact area, but that's why it shows it, where I will just show you how I approach these jumps with these chords where we go up and down in incredibly fast speed. So first and foremost, you need to understand what forearm rotation really is. Now, everyone who studies with me knows that, but just for you, if you're new, this is really what I'm talking about. You know, the whole forearm from the elbow connected up to the fingers, working in one unit. Yeah, I describe this always as, imagine this as if this was your tennis racket and you were playing tennis. This has to be as stable and as solid in one thing like your tennis racket in order to work. Now, why is this so important? Because we know if you try this, this is the fastest movement we have in our playing arm. You know, as soon as you involve the upper arm is extremely important, the muscles up here and the back and everything, but they get more tired more quickly. And in this kind of scenario where you have to go up and down the keyboard, this is really an incredible tool to achieve that. Because what can happen when you play this kind of thing is tension, curling, and in almost all cases, if you're not ready, with not established technique, you will end up injured. That's my experience as a performer myself and as a teacher. I struggled with these things myself a lot in my life when I was young. I always thought I have small hands, I will never be able to reach these chords, and I will definitely not be able to jump so fast from all these chords. However, after all my research and work with the Taubman approach, I realized that the forearm rotation for me is the only way in order to play this effortlessly, painlessly, and in a way I can repeat it, without any tiredness. This is another thing. People may be able to sort of squash themselves through these sections with a lot of sacrifice and are exhausted, or need to release, can play this through maybe only once. And this movement in particular is so long, but the time you come to the last page, you might be already exhausted if you're not effortless and free in your forearm. So I'm going to discuss it in quite a lot of detail. So remember, this is the first thing you need to understand, that this works as a unit. Now, my aim is always to keep my hand in the most natural position, which is this, So I do everything, even with these very unfortunately shaped chords, to keep my hand like this. So when you jump, for example, let's start here by 326. So let's say this is the first big jump people do. That's about 329, yeah? So from the C flat, you jump over into that position. So you can see that's a fairly easy jump because we have a single note going into a single note. I still always think, like I say, whether it's a one note rotation or later on when I have more or 2-3 notes at the same time, I keep my hand always together. Now, the first thing you need to understand, if you want to jump to the right, you have to go to the left first. And that is so important because simply physically, it gives you a boost of energy. And this movement I'm talking about, the forearm rotation from the elbow, because it is so effortless and fast, it becomes a reflex. And that's what we need to achieve. When you have these very difficult passages, you want to have a technique which works in reflexes. You know, I always say they have to work automatically. If you can of course also jump like this, just moving the whole arm in this way. However, what it means is that you have to activate the muscles and the tendons behind your elbow. And in order to do that, you actually have to pull and you have to do the jump. You have to make it, you have to go over here. Whereas when I use my forearm rotation, I go from the left to the right. Can you see? It's like I always say when you practice leaps, you have to imagine like this is as if you were on a springboard, you know, and you push yourself off and you jump to the next place. So it's effortless jumping here. So that is the first thing you need to understand. The hand needs to be together. If you want to go to the right, you go to the left first like this. So you always keep the whole hand, forearm and fingers connected. I don't twist here around my wrist. I keep the whole thing together. And that brings me in here. Now the next section, that's really where the problem is, and that is this one. So you have these very awkward intervals going into this chord, B flat C, F and G. Now, I'm coming now to the first thing I said about strategic planning. In order to leap and jump properly and effortlessly, you need to jump from an ideal place and you need to land on an ideal place. And what does it mean? An ideal place means to find the most perfect position for this chord here, which is like this. I don't play the chord like this because that would be not comfortable for me. I have a little bit of twisting here. I like to be aligned. You know, this is the other thing I'm very, very keen on and I do not compromise is the alignment of my forearm, hand and fingers. And that's how this chord looks great. For me, that's the best position. And you see how much in I have to be. Now, when I play from here, I want to reach that like this. So this is my perfect landing position. Now, where do I start jumping? So the interval I'm going from is the F and G. And you can see I played right in here as well, right across from my perfect landing position. Now, why is that so important? Because if you can see just slowly, this way is a lot shorter than if I were to play this here and then jump. It's a longer way. And trust me, in speed, every millimeter will help you. Every millimeter of a longer journey will cost you. So be clever and plan strategically. The jump is a lot faster when you're right across. Now, we also know that every interval and every chord requires a double rotation. Now, what does it mean? If you're not familiar, it just means that you have a little preparatory motion to the thumb, which keeps your hand and arm absolutely beautifully balanced, yeah? And like, again, this is my perfect position, and I always aim for that. Now, how do I do this? From here to here, because obviously that's an interval, requires a double rotation, and that requires a double rotation. So as you can see, when I jump from here to that chord, my hand does a little bit going up here and falling to the left again. So we are back to, I jump here, although I jump here, I turn like this and then I'm landing like this. So although I want to land to the left, I have to rotate to the right. But this movement up in the air, what I call the preparatory motion, is so important because of many reasons, not just because it will place you in the perfect place here, but it's also important to release, for your moment of releasing. So in order to be here right across quickly, effortlessly, without any tension, without any pain, something in the air has to happen. And that is the small preparatory motion. I do it a little bit slower again. Okay, in very fast tempo. You can hardly see it, and yet I still do it. If I were not to do that, then I would carry something, a little bit of tension in there, but also I wouldn't land as perfectly. And remember, we are aiming to be always in the perfect place. So that is for me the perfect way from jumping here to there, with this one very small preparatory motion in the air, which brings me into a double rotation to the chord. Yeah, so all the aspects are already covered. So alignment, perfect landing, perfect start, right across, and then using this movement, which is the fastest we have. Now, if you go to the next bar, which is bar 333, there's an example. This one here, this is G, B flat, E, going to the C sharp and back. Now, this is another perfect example where people get injured and people get stuck. Because if you have bigger hands, which I don't, ideally, you would like to be right across the C sharp in order to make that way as short as possible. But for me, it's impossible because my hand, I would have to pull it. Just the most comfortable position for my hand shape to play this particular chord is this. So this is my perfect starting position. But now I have to go to that C sharp. And as you can see, this is a long way. Most people, most of my students I've experienced would pull to that one. They would pull with the thumb and pull back. And what it causes, it's a very angled movement. And in speed, there is no time to be edgy or angled. Everything has to flow. And it has to flow in a very round and organic way. So how do I do this then with my narrow hands? I play this chord in the perfect position. Now, I use what I call, or what the Taubman approach calls, forearm shaping, which means I take this here and do it shape backwards. So this is a forearm over shape, over, and then an under. Now I do it a little bit faster. It's quite like this, okay? And what this does, that when I come from the whole passage, I'm still having my rotation, but I also have a flowing motion rather than an edgy one. So to give an example, so I come from here and then I'm landing here, my perfect position, push off, over, under, and now I'm back into the B flat, which is here and which is here. So you see, I'm using the last chord here to push myself off the springboard into the perfect starting position here. Now I'm right here and have a small preparatory motion again to bring me over. So it's a bit complicated to explain, but I hope you see the benefit. So the idea is to use as less muscles and tendons as possible, because the more you use, the more you have to release, the more you have to control, and so on and so forth, and the more you can injure. If you start to develop a great understanding and functioning of this, you will understand what it means to have a reflex in playing, okay? And if you don't have problems with these things, you probably do this anyway without realizing it, because for me, I'm convinced this is the best way to play this kind of stuff, okay? Because otherwise you're in trouble. You work really, really hard, and I just really don't know how people do it otherwise. But do let me know if you have a different way of approaching this.